Well, frankly, I think a lot of the decision making that orgs do when it comes to roster building seems to be based on ignorance. I think that I don't feel like I'm alone in being a player who sees a lot of roster buildings and doesn't really understand what the point is besides just spending money. Um, or even sometimes spending money in weird ways. So I honestly can't find the logic in a lot of the decisions.
This is Azento from Esports Heaven, and I have here with me Solo from Golden Guardians, victorious against FlyQuest, and this was kind of crazy because we haven't really seen Sett in the top lane in a really long time, and this has actually been, I think, one of your better picks, your better champions. But overall, like, why the Sett anyways? Why the Sett pick?
Um, I mean, going into the draft, well, I guess just the way the draft played out. I mean, to me, it seemed like they had Tom Kench, and they had a Kali. So, looking what we had, we had a couple options for what we're gonna do with the Lee Sin, what we're gonna pick for the team, and I knew that if I pick Sett, that they're probably gonna play Gnar or like some kind of
Mm,
top.
yeah,
But to me, it just seemed too good to not take Sett against a Kali and send a TK.
yeah.
Um, and I was like, I'll just be able to, laning phase will kind of suck, but I think that it's pretty valuable here, so we just ended up going with that. And yeah, I mean, the laning phase kind of sucked, but I was able to like find plays and be impactful, and that was kind of the whole idea. Um, so I was pretty happy with it how it turned out.
Yeah, you did the classic top laner move of all sacrifice for the team. Don't worry. So
Yep.
that's that did work out for you guys a lot. And as far as your entire team and Golden Guardians in general, we've seen like this different style maybe or this different type of coordination. And I talked with Stixay the previous week talking about how Golden Guardians needs more of like a veteran voice, and they've gotten that with you now on the lineup as well as Stixay, of course, too. But I want to know about just your general challenges maybe that you faced in trying to really like whip these young players into shape, as like a cohesive unit and whatnot.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think that the team is moving along pretty well. I mean, working with young players is a little bit new, especially from an LCS standpoint. I think that there's growing pains. I mean, we probably threw away this like the CLG game we threw. Probably a little bit more. Later in the season we'll probably be able to win those type of games.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of got blown out yesterday just because of some like really just early mistakes. So those are kind of like the growing pains that come with having new players. But I'll say that it's a lot better from how I feel about it is it's a lot better to have those mistakes happen and just be like, we have a lot of room to grow, and that it's just more of inexperience and a like lack of skill than it
Sure.
is to like have those mistakes happen on a team of like vets. Because if it's a team of vets and they make those mistakes, it's like you just don't like it feels hard to change those habits. So that's been the best part is just knowing that like even if we make dumb mistakes that seem can be frustrating. It's like we have a lot of room to grow, and that's exciting.
Yeah.
The fact that we're competing in a lot of these games um, against good teams, it's exciting that we're able to do that with you know how young our roster is and how early on the season it is.
Mm-hmm. That's good to hear that you guys have a lot of growth or a lot of room to grow and whatnot, and this isn't like the final form. You guys are only in like Super Saiyan 1. We got we got a couple more to go.
Yeah.
So now let me get your thoughts about. Well, let's just ask it bluntly. Why is it that you always end up on a team later on, even though initially teams didn't want to pick you up? Like you're like the Kickus of NA, I like to call it.
um, I mean, last time, or previously before FlyQuest, was definitely. I mean, I think part of it was teams not really valuing me as high as they should, but part of it was, some of my own faults
Hmm.
as a teammate and stuff. So, I'll take some responsibility for that. Uh, this year, was more surprising. I mean, it's hard to be disappointed when you had the same thing happen previously. So, I don't really have any expectations going into off seasons usually anymore. But I'll say for this year, I mean, I think that to put it bluntly or like plainly without getting into like super high context, I think that a lot of teams just decided to try like unproven talent and import
Mm,
like mediocre players.
sure.
And they take up a lot of spots. So, uh, yeah, I think that's like the plain way of answering it. I mean, there's a lot of back like context about it, but I think for the most part that's how it came down to. I mean, GMs just made decisions, and I wasn't high priority, and that sucks. And that's just kind of I don't make those decisions because obviously if I did, I would rate me a lot higher. But I just sat out and I was like, I knew I was gonna get another opportunity, and that came in the form of this. And like same thing I said when I was on FlyQuest. I told Nick and I told Danon this, who's the GM for
Mm-hmm.
GGS. I was like, whatever team picks me up is gonna get, they're gonna get rewarded because I bring the best of myself to every team and every org I'm a part of. And I always go through on that kind of promise.
For sure. And you had spoken a little bit about maybe your intangibles that teams just aren't seeming to pick up on. Because I feel like everyone knows that you're a good player. I think a lot of fans know that you're a good player. A lot of analysts know that you're a great player. But the reasons you're overlooked is because not many people might know about your intangibles. So, with that said, what's your opinion on teams and their ability to maybe mesh personalities or these intangibles when creating a roster rather than just going for stats of like who is the best?
Um, well, frankly, I think a lot of the decision making that orgs do when it comes to roster building seems to be based on ignorance. I think that I don't feel like I'm alone in being a player who sees a lot of roster buildings and doesn't really understand what the point is besides just spending money. Um, or even sometimes spending money in weird ways. So I honestly can't find the logic in a lot of the decisions.
Mm.
Um, so that's probably the part that's most frustrating. You just because a lot of it just doesn't make sense. Not to like call anybody out specifically, but a lot of it is just like I don't really see the point in some of these rosters. I don't really see what they're building towards.
Do you think
Um,
it's because you're missing context or they're missing context because they don't know the players as well as you do, or maybe you don't know the players as well as they do? Like what's the disconnect here?
uh, you know, I'm willing to be open to the fact that maybe I don't understand behind the scenes, but I'll just
Mm-hmm.
say that the rosters that I've previously talked about, like privately, that I said didn't make any sense, and I don't understand where they're going for, unless, I mean, besides just burning money. Um, I feel like I've been fairly accurate with a
Mm.
lot of what's happened, so you can kind of, I guess, assume. But
Okay.
but yeah, I mean, the league's in kind of a weird spot to say the least, and I mean, I don't want to understate as well. A big part of why teams probably overlook me is definitely an age factor. I think
Uh,
me being the second oldest player behind Afro. Um,
wait, how old are you again?
I turned 28 like a few weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah, a few
Okay.
weeks ago. Yeah, I mean, I think that is part of the reason. I mean, it's obviously strange because I mean, I'm not old or anything, and I mean, I don't know. That's a strange thing, but that definitely seems to be a lot of the argument.
Mm.
Is age being a factor. So, I mean, what can I do about that? I mean, it's also kind of something based off ignorance, and I mean, it's really hard to argue people's opinion on that.
Mm-hmm. So I finally want to get your thoughts on the benching of Alfari, because he's been such a dominant player
You want the
for
scoop?
Team Liquid. Yeah, and like let me just get your thoughts because like actually better yet, what's your take on a negative or toxic player, being benched even though he's good or gets wins on the board?
Um, I don't really know anything about the behind the scenes with Alfari. So I don't really know what their situation is, why he's getting benched. Obviously, he has some confrontation or there's some disagreement with the coaching staff. I mean, that seems to be something that they've both said.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't know. I mean, I think that it's always going to be a tough decision. I mean, I personally always feel as if the players should be. I feel like if the coaching staff can't handle a player to the point that they're getting benched, especially someone as talented as Alfari and even like Sven earlier. I mean, assuming that
Hmm.
the situations are similar, I feel like that is more of a failure on the coaching staff than it is the player. Um, Whether it be not setting boundaries early enough or enforcing those boundaries, whether it be like not um, being like crystal clear with the player about consequences and the timeline of things. So I've always felt that the players who are problematic, and I do agree that there are players that are problematic,
Sure.
are able to be dealt with if the coaching staff is like up to that level. So not to say that like Jat's bad or anything. I just think that things, you know, there's a lot of it's still like a young league, and even the coaches are young, and I think that it takes a lot of experience to handle those situations delicately and handle them correctly. And it's very easy for communication to break down and situations to just hit a breaking point where players get benched, and that's kind of what we've seen the last, you know, a couple players have split.
All right. Well, it's been a nice chat, and I'm glad to know from that FlyQuest game that your hands are still working. You ain't got arthritis or nothing, you know?
Yeah, I'm not that old, right?
Well, thank you very much for your time, Solo. This has been Azento from Esports Heaven and Solo from Golden Guardians. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, man.